Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with Tina. We are doing this a little bit different today because for whatever reason I cannot get onto YouTube. So we are just going to pretend we're having coffee together live. I'm going to pretend that I'm reading all of your wonderful comments at the bottom, and then I'm going to post this to YouTube. So welcome. And Mercury is not even in retrograde. I'm just having computer problems as usual. And I have a brand new computer, which is probably part of the problem. But I bought this to avoid the problems that I've been having. So I'm going to just jump right into questions that people have sent over. My ex saw that I have a tracking app on my son's phone. My ex claims it's stalking him and his family and it's illegal. I told him it's part of our son's safety plan and he is not to turn it off. How can I handle this with my ex to leave the app on when the child is with him? So first, my overall disclaimer, I cannot give legal advice. I'm not qualified to do that. I can only share what I would do if I were in your shoes, or, things that I see in the courts or through my clients. But ultimately, your attorney is your voice in the courtroom, so always check with them on things like this. I like to play devil's advocate in a situation like this. Yes, I personally tracked my kids. My ex-husband did not know that. And it ended up working very well for me in family court because I was able to prove that he was lying about where our kids were. With that said, looking at this from the other perspective, would I want a tracking app on my daughter's phone with my ex, with him monitoring it? God, no. So I, in the eyes of the court, it may be seen as a problem. Definitely check with your attorney, but, I know my ex-husband and his family wanted to give my daughters iPads constantly. And I knew the reason was, A, to play Disneyland Dad, but B, because he would be able to know where we are. And, I just didn't want him to have that window into our lives. So, in my situation, my ex had been built up by the court and within the court system to be such a liar that he had lost all credibility. And so I feel like I was in a little bit different situation. The topic we were specifically talking about in court on that day was, where were the kids? He's saying one thing, you seem to believe a completely different story. Does anyone have proof? Does anyone have GPS? Anything like that? And that's where I kind of went, actually I do, Your Honor. I do have GPS to show where the kids were. And so, I would feel like my situation was a little unique on that. In general, would it have been frowned upon for me to track their whereabouts during his time if he had not been built up by the court, in the mind of the court to be a liar? Probably. If it had unfolded differently, I believe it could have actually backfired. So, I see that situation both ways. And whenever I'm looking at any situation, I try to look at it from a neutral vantage point. I don't know you. I don't know him. How does the court view this? They don't know either of you either. So I guess I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I can tell you if I were in his shoes, I would not allow a tracking device to be on with my kids. So that's a hard one. And as always, I don't have all the answers, and this is very much a community group. And so if someone else has had direct experience with this, please feel free to share in the comments about that. What was that like? Okay, let's go to question number 2. How badly will it affect? This is I've been there. Well, kind of. How badly will it affect my case that most prior conversations I used aggression and expletives to exude strength? I know it's not the way to handle the situation, but I was so determined not to be a doormat that I swung the pendulum the other way. That's a hard one. And you want to dig out from that impression if that is being painted, you know, about you, or, my guess is it is, because I know if my ex used expletives or, came across aggressive, I would use that to paint a picture of who he is. With that said, I'll give you kind of my go-to answer. So, for example, we are all going to have baggage in some capacity. I know one of the things my ex-husband used against me was my dysfunctional family life and upbringing. So when I was in a custody evaluation, I was very transparent. I said, yes, I have a very dysfunctional childhood, home life. I have learned incredible lessons from those experiences, and it has made me who I am today. And I think I'm a great human. I think I'm a great mom, contributing member to our society. So as long as you're operating from a place of truth and you're not fabricating things, sometimes it's repackaging it and presenting it back to them, regifting it in a way. So for something like that, and there's things when I look back at my custody battle that I'm absolutely not proud of. I wish I could go back. I cringe when I read things. Not quite in that, I wasn't using expletives and things like that, but it's still all in the same realm, to where I would, for me personally, if I had to answer to that, I would probably say something along the lines of, and this would be my truth. I've been dealing with someone for the past 10 years who has absolutely no regard for my boundaries and, for me as a person. And I've been working with my therapist to have a backbone, to strengthen myself, to have boundaries, because I've lived my life without boundaries. And I'm still learning all of these things. And so am I proud of the things that I wrote in that situation? No. That's not who I am. I wish I could go back and do things differently. It was, on a side note, I like to think of it, somebody first finds religion and sometimes they're really over the top and kind of, whoa, happy for you, that's great, but, you would present much better if you could, meet me at my level, rather than from this standpoint where you're looking down on me. I kind of see that as this similar analogy to where, I would say I'm still learning. I'm still learning to have boundaries. This individual knows how to push my buttons, and my buttons were pushed and I reacted, and it was a learning experience, and I'm shifting. I'm very conscious not to answer in a heated, mood, or, in a heated situation, that I take time to absorb and to think more about it before I respond. So something like that would be the direction I would go. Anything in family court can be turned around. I see it, most things can be turned around. I see it all the time. I see really dire circumstances do a complete 180. And so there's always hope in the family court system for things to turn around. But so much of this, and I talk about it a lot, has to do with presentation. How do you present to the courts? And that is so important, because the overriding, thing that you need to be aware of is that you know who you are. They don't know who you are. You are, in their minds, are no different from your ex. And one of the things I like to keep in mind is that, yes, there were red flags about my ex, but it took me probably a full 7 years to really understand the depth of dysfunction and to really see behind the mask and see who he was. So how would I expect a court, a judge, or an evaluator, or anyone to pick up on this within 3 court dates or 10 court dates? These are situations where it's almost like a job interview. The person is on their best behavior, presenting very well, and so how do we expect anyone to see behind the mask that quickly? So that's my general question or response on that. I have been divorced from my narcissistic ex for almost 2 years. Our custody setup was working relatively well until he married his new wife. I know so many of you can relate to this. I allowed visitation more frequently than what was ordered. I was doing the pickups and drop-offs whenever I didn't have to work. Working with changes from time to time, weekends, locations. Now there's wife number 3, who's become the aggressor, forcing me to follow the more restricting custody order. How can I make these changes easier on my kids and keep the communication with their dad and not his wife? Professional and non-confrontational. That is such a common problem that we see, and it's one of the reasons why when we have a stepmom who comes into the group, or a stepdad, and wants to post a question on our Facebook page or in one of our private communities, we just don't allow it, because it's not really, I know there's lots of support areas set up for step parents. And our forum isn't it. And so many of you are dealing with this type of situation that even when a well-meaning, healthy step parent steps in, everybody attacks because, you're dealing with this type of situation. I know for when Glenn and I got married, or, we're dating and living together, he has an ex-wife and 3 kids, and I have my ex-husband. We never crossed over into those. Those were sacred. That was his responsibility on his end. I've never communicated with his ex-wife outside of family gatherings, weddings, things like that. And it's not my place. I don't find that it's a healthy direction. And same with my situation. Even as heated as it is, as public as mine has been, Glenn stayed in his lane. And I'm incredibly thankful for that, because what we see is it escalates. It escalates everything. And a lot of times these individuals end up with somebody who is really toxic. And so, I would be communicating in a way that, I would love to go back to where we were with, the flexibility, with the communication that we used to have. I'm at a loss to understand how things have gone in this direction. I'm personally always a fan from a strategic standpoint of making nice with that other party, even if they are the most toxic person. I want to at least be able to show, if it ever comes up, that I was friendly, I was polite. I was saying, hey, can we sit down and talk? I'm really confused. We both have our different perspectives. I want to hear yours. I want to be open to us. We are all going to be a part of the kids' lives. Hopefully she won't be for a long time if he's on number 3 and she's toxic. My guess is it's, when you aren't the target, that's when they usually implode. So the more you can pull yourself out of the conflict with her and make nice with her, even if it's for strategy, big picture, it usually works out a lot better than going head to head with her. And, you know, a lot of times when we're trying to communicate with him and say, you know, what's going on? I don't understand why it has to be this way. She's going to take it personally. And when she's targeting you, she gets brownie points from him, is my guess. And then it feeds his supply that she's, you know, on his side. And you know, there are so many different variables and dynamics in these situations. My overall piece of advice would be to diffuse the conflict wherever you can, and make nice for court purposes, for your kids. And a lot of people may not agree with me on that stance, and that's okay. You know, I don't have all the answers. I will never claim to, and nor would I want to. I learn things every single day from a lot of you, from our community, and so chime in. If you have an answer that's worked for you, share it. I encourage that. Last question. I recently mediated my divorce with my narcissistic ex-husband. After getting some of what he wanted, he completely abandoned our 4 kids. He hasn't spoken or seen them in 4 months. He has returned everything of theirs he had, and he's never used any visitation time. Any idea as to why this would be? You know, first of all, I know there's a lot of you applauding this and going, oh my God, that's my dream. The reality is it can be hard on the kids. And so I understand where you're coming from on this. Why he did it, is it common? Not really. It's not what we typically see, but does it happen? Yeah. You know, a lot of times if maybe he has a new feed supply, a new girlfriend, a new boyfriend, you know, whatever it is, my guess is that he's, you know, out there creating a whole new life. He has a victim card, my evil ex-wife, you know, yada, yada. Who knows what that is? But there are a lot of these people who, most of them fight for custody just to hurt us. But then there are the ones who really aren't capable of showing up, who aren't capable of, they don't want to. It's, you know, they don't have that in them, you know, and a lot of them will go forward and just create a whole new life and forget that you ever existed. And for your kids, that's confusing. It's painful. It can cause damage. You know, I remember early on, my daughter's therapist said, you know, he bounces in and out and doesn't show up for visits a lot, cancels at the last minute. And, you know, from a therapeutic standpoint, we would rather him be all in or completely walk away, because, you know, it's easier to allow the kids to go forward and start processing these things if it's either all in or all out. And so I hope that your kids are working with a really good therapist through this, because it's critical. And it's painful for them. And I don't know your situation or whether or not he was, you know, abusive to them. You know, even if he was abusive to you, that's still abusing them, because they're seeing this, they're witnessing this, and the dynamics and dysfunction becomes part of their foundation. So I hope you can all heal. I know for me, when my ex just disappeared, I stayed in communication 3 or 4 times a year. I would just send an email and just say, hey, wanted to check in. If you can let me know what your intentions are, so I can notify the kid's therapist and work through these things. If you're not coming back, you know, if you could just be open with us and let us know that. That ended up making me present very well in court. But there was truth to that. I truly did want to know, but I also knew I had to keep building my case to show myself to be the healthy co-parent. So that's it for today, everyone. I'm so sorry live did not happen live, and we're doing it this way, but I look forward to reading your comments. Take care. So today's guest instructor not only comes with an introduction, but he comes with a trigger warning. I have a light on me. In 2020, I started a TikTok account to the dismay of my 15-year-old daughter. And what I have found is that it's a wonderful platform to help educate our younger generation on narcissistic personality disorder. What I did not expect when I started a TikTok account was to connect with a diagnosed narcissist who uses the platform to educate other people on his disorder and to really allow them to get into his mindset and understand more about him. His name is Lee Hammock, and I put myself back in 2009 when my battle began. And And I will be brutally honest, I would have paid him a lot of money to give me the type of insight that he's capable of providing. That was back when I was very new to, I had just started to connect the dots on narcissistic personality disorder. And I would have paid him to be my strategy partner and help me understand what I was up against, what the motivation was for my ex husband, and to really allow me into his mind. That is the reason why I have invited him here, but I don't issue that trigger warning lightly. I will tell you, I just finished watching all of his videos that he sent over, and I myself was triggered. It's chilling, it's fascinating, but the bigger picture is that it's critical for all of us to truly understand. And, Lee shares in today's module, he shares all of the things that I educate people on, but to actually hear it from him really shook me. So I want to let you know to be prepared if right now is not an appropriate time for you to watch this. I wanted to give you a warning so you can push pause and come back to it when you feel centered and ready. Without further ado, I would like to welcome guest instructor Lee Hammock.